In the quiet corners of the galaxy where stars whispered ancient secrets and space stretched without end, the humans arrived like a calm breeze before a storm. They came not with weapons drawn, nor flags raised high, but with simple words carried by steady voices. They called it the Peace Initiative, and they meant every word of it. Their ships were clean and silver like fish in the sea of stars. They did not carry cannons on the outside, nor soldiers in parade lines. They carried envoys, scientists, translators, and gifts from Earth, things made of wood and metal and memory, each one a piece of who they were and what they had learned over centuries of war and healing. When they reached the Galactic Council, the largest collection of advanced species ever known, they were welcomed with polite silence. Some were curious, some cautious, but many had already made up their minds about the new race from a small blue planet on the edge of nowhere. The Vorgan Dominion watched them with cold yellow eyes, their spiked armor gleaming like knives in the council light. They ruled through strength, they conquered through fear, and they had seen thousands of species rise and fall through the ages. To them, peace was just the pause before the blade. Still the humans spoke. They spoke of treaties of trade, of shared science, of open borders of ideas, exchanged like seeds in the wind. They offered knowledge of medicine and farming and clean energy. They offered help to the poor worlds, the forgotten moons, the dying suns. They called for unity, not command. They offered hands, not chains. A few smaller species listened with real interest. The Lauren Shapers nodded with their glassy skulls shining like moons. The Drelly clicked their wings and whispered among themselves. But the largest empires said little and did less. They saw Earth's offer as weakness wrapped in pretty words. The humans noticed this, but said nothing. They waited for the vote, the great vote, the one that would decide if Earth would be allowed full membership into the Council, a rare thing for a species so young and so far removed from the galactic core. The vote came, and it passed by a single voice. Earth was allowed in. Cheers rang in the chambers, but they did not echo in the halls of power, where shadows moved and whispers grew louder. The Vorgans sat silent in their seats, their eyes locked on the human ambassador, a man named Hale, with white at his temples and steel in his stare. They would not forget this day, and neither would he. The humans set up embassies. They sent ships with supplies and gifts to distant colonies. They repaired satellites and cured diseases for worlds that could not afford help on their own. They taught farming in sand and built machines that cleaned poison from air and water. And still the whispers grew. Ships began disappearing near human space at first, just one, then 3, then 7 signals lost without warning, without reason. The council asked questions, the humans gave full answers and sent rescue teams. But nothing was found, just silence where signals used to be. Some said it was pirates, others said it was deep space storms, but Hale knew better. He had seen this pattern before in the early days of Earth's rise, when warlords tested borders with shadows, not bombs. He knew a trap when he saw one. But he said nothing, not yet. More small things happened. A human station was hacked, and its oxygen systems failed. 3 engineers died quietly before backup kicked in. Another station had its navigation code scrambled and nearly drifted into a star, if not for a last-second override. The council again said they would investigate, but the reports came back clean and cold, no fault, no proof. The Vorgans smiled more now and watched the humans like hunters watching prey that had not yet run. But Earth did not run. Instead, they kept building, they kept helping, they kept offering peace to a galaxy that had forgotten what peace could look like. They did not raise their voices, they did not point fingers. They simply watched and remembered. Back on Earth, old generals met in quiet rooms, men and women who had fought in the last great war, a war that had left cities burning and oceans rising. They had sworn to protect the new peace with all they had, and now they saw it shaking beneath them like ice before a fall. They did not speak of war yet, but they began to prepare. In hidden places, they tested old machines in silent bunkers. They rewrote old codes in deep space. They sent quiet ships with no names and no flags to map every inch of nearby systems and log every movement of every alien ship that crossed into human space. All while the Peace Initiative smiled and shook hands and delivered food to the hungry. And so the galaxy watched Earth rise, not with fire, but with patience, not with noise, but with quiet strength. But something was changing. Something in the air between stars, something in the space between words. And somewhere in the dark, the line between peace and silence began to blur. And the humans waited for the day that line would break. The silence was no longer empty. It was full of questions, full of fear, full of shadows that moved just beyond sight. Earth kept smiling, kept helping, kept offering hands of peace. But behind those hands, something old was waking up. It began with whispers across the stars, quiet words between captains and traders, between soldiers and smugglers. They spoke of human ships vanishing without calls for help, without distress signals, just gone like sparks snuffed in wind. Then came the sabotage, strange malfunctions in systems built to last decades, engines that shut down, and mid-flight computers that changed coordinates on their own, leading ships into storms and black holes and dead zones. At first, the Council blamed errors, blamed space, dust, blamed poor maintenance. They said the humans were too new, too inexperienced, and maybe they just needed more time to understand the deep paths of the galaxy. But the humans knew better. Ambassador Hale read the reports late at night under soft light in his quiet room above the council chamber. He read names of pilots. He once met stations he helped build of colonies that once sent music and now sent nothing. He saw the pattern, and he remembered old patterns from Earth, from before peace, from when shadows meant death and silence meant a storm was coming. Still, he said nothing to the council, not yet. Instead, he spoke to the others, to the Lawrence Shapers who studied truth like math, to the Drelly, who listened more than they talked, to the Vrati, who remembered the taste of fire from their own lost wars. He asked questions and waited and listened, and slowly he began to see the truth. Someone was testing the humans. Not with full war, not with armies, but with whispers, with fear, with tricks meant to bleed them quietly. And behind it all, always stood the Vorgans. The Vorgan Dominion was old, older than most species could count. They had no word for peace in their language, only rest between battles. Their world was made of stone and metal, and fear. Their leaders were born in war, raised in war, and died in war. To them, peace was not a goal, it was a trap, and Earth had walked right into it. But they were not ready to strike, not yet. They wanted to see how humans would break first. And so the whispering war began. It was not loud, it had no declarations, no battles with banners and speeches. It came in the form of lost cargo, poisoned food, silent hackers, invisible weapons, drones with no ID, small things, but deadly things. A human hospital ship was found drifting in deep space, engines melted from the inside, no life, no signs of struggle, just silence and the smell of burned plastic. Another ship, a science vessel exploring a gas giant, exploded from the inside out a few hours after sending a signal about strange energy readings. The message cut off mid-sentence. Earth still did not fight back. They still called it accidents. But behind the soft voices, the wheels began to turn. On Earth, old commanders gathered in the underground halls of Unity Base, where no satellites could watch and no signals could be traced. They met in person like in the old days when peace was just a dream. They lit no lights and used no names, only ranks and eyes that remembered what it meant to lose everything and still keep fighting. They reviewed the data line by line, pattern by pattern, and they all came to the same conclusion. Someone was trying to bleed Earth slowly, hoping they would panic, hoping they would strike first so the galaxy would blame them. But humans were patient now. They had learned from centuries of pain. They would not be the first to start a war, but they would be the last to end it. Across human space, things began to change quietly, but fast. Colonies reinforced their shields without announcement. Trade ships got silent upgrades to their engines, and armor spaceports tested their defense systems twice a week instead of once. Old satellites, long thought useless, blinked awake with new programs deep in their code and eyes sharper than any camera. Spy drones vanished into deep space, flying under alien radars, taking notes that would never be shared with the Council. The human military no longer wore bright uniforms. They wore silence. They moved like wind through metal halls and carried weapons that made no sound. Still, the peace initiative remained on the surface, offering help, offering aid, offering kindness. And the galaxy still watched for the smile, not knowing what stirred beneath the surface. Then came the breaking point. It happened on the edge of the Corthan Nebula, where 3 human ships were escorting a medical convoy toward a mining world with a plague outbreak. The ships had no weapons, only shields and healing tools and food. As they reached the planet's orbit, 6 unknown vessels dropped out of hyperspace. No warning, no signal, just red trails in the sky like claws on glass. They fired without speaking. The human escorts tried to protect the convoy, but they were not warships. They were torn apart piece by piece while trying to shield the medical carriers. 2 carriers escaped with damage, 1 was lost. Over 200 doctors, nurses, and engineers disappeared in fire. The council said it was a misunderstanding that rogue pirates had acted alone. But Hale knew better. He stood before the council chamber dressed in black, his voice calm, but heavy with thunder. He showed the images, the attack, the weapons, the symbols scratched faintly on the ships before they vanished. They matched Vorgan technology, old models used during their border wars. The Vorgans denied everything. The council again chose silence. And so Earth made a choice. They did not shout, they did not threaten. They simply left. Hale walked out of the chamber without a word. Behind him, the human delegation followed one by one, not looking back. They closed their embassies the next day. They recalled all human workers and ships from council space. They sent one message to every government in the galaxy, translated into all known languages. We came in peace, and you answered with blood. Now we walk alone. Do not follow. Then they vanished. Human space went dark, no signals, no travel, no trade, no aid. The peace initiative ended without a sound. And in that silence, the galaxy finally began to understand what they had lost. The humans had never been weak. They had been kind. And kindness, when betrayed, turns into something else. Something far more dangerous. The Whispering War ended not with a battle, but with a choice. And that choice would change the stars forever. The chamber was colder than usual, as if the walls themselves could feel what was coming. A deep quiet filled the great hall, where once voices rose like waves and debates thundered across marble floors. Now only whispers lived here, and even they were careful. The humans had returned, not with ships, not with soldiers, not with fire. They returned with one man, a lone Ambassador Hale, dressed in the same long coat he wore the day Earth was accepted into the council. His steps were slow but steady, like a storm walking toward shore. He did not smile, and he did not bow. He simply walked to the center of the council floor, where the lights above dimmed to a quiet blue, and the flags of all member worlds glowed around him like silent stars. The representatives from across the galaxy sat watching, some with curiosity, some with fear, others with cold indifference. The Vorgan delegate leaned back in his seat, golden armor, gleaming eyes narrowed and sharp like knives on stone. Ambassador Hale looked at them all and then spoke, not loudly, not with anger, but with a voice that carried like wind through stone halls. 3 years ago, he said, Earth came here with hands open and voices soft. We brought medicine, food, technology, and peace, not because we were weak, but because we were tired of war and hoped that others were too. We were warned, he said, we were told by our own people, our elders, our warriors, that peace does not grow in soil watered by blood, but we hoped anyway. He paused, and the chamber stayed quiet. Not even the Vrati delegation clicked their metal claws, a sign of deep respect in their culture. We lost ships, Hale continued. We lost people, we lost families, explorers, doctors, scientists, and aid workers, all gone, not in war, but in silence. Their ships attacked, their names lost to deep space with no justice and no truth. We brought you proof, and you brought us politics. He raised his hand, and a small orb floated into view. Its light flickered, and then showed images too sharp and too real to ignore: burning ships, broken hulls at silent stations, and then faces of the lost human lives now gone forever. The council watched in silence. Some shifted in their seats, others looked away, a few stared straight ahead, unmoving. The Vorgan delegate remained still, smiling faintly, the smile of a predator that sees its prey trapped. We asked for answers, Hale said. We asked for help, we asked for truth, and what we received was denial. Again the orb shifted, showing communication logs, redacted files, missing data, delayed investigations, and quiet meetings in dark corners where decisions were made not with justice but with fear. You saw Earth as soft, Hale said. You saw our peace as weakness and our patience as surrender. You were wrong. He stepped forward now, eyes like steel cut from frozen mountains. You took our kindness and called it cowardice, and in doing so you made your worst mistake. Because now Earth has remembered. The chamber remained silent. No one dared speak, not yet. We remember the old ways, Hale, said the ways we locked away after our final war, the tools we buried deep, the weapons we never wished to use again. We remember the strength that built our home from fire and storm and ash, and we remember what it means to be pushed too far. He turned slowly, facing each delegation one by one, not looking away, not blinking. You laughed at us when we gave aid, you ignored us when we asked for peace, and you watched when our people died. And so we walk away, not from fear, but from choice. The lights shifted now, turning low, and read the sign of formal departure. The council had rarely seen it used, and never by a species this young, this bold. From this moment forward, Hale, said, Earth withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will close our borders, cut our trade, and seal our skies. We will take nothing, and we will leave nothing behind. We do not seek war. We seek silence, the kind you taught us. The chamber remained frozen until one voice rose. It was small, thin, a Drelly scholar, barely more than a child by her people's age. She stood and asked why. Why walk away instead of strike back? Hale looked at her, and for a brief second the steel in his voice turned to something softer. Because we are not what you think we are, he said. We are not conquerors, not anymore, and we are not here to rule. We came to build, not break. But you taught us that even builders must wear armor in a galaxy like this. He turned back to the council floor, and now the fire returned to his voice. We do not fight you, because you are not worth the war, and we do not stay because you are not worth the peace. We walk alone because we must. Because Earth will not bleed for those who cheer while we fall. The humans filed in now, a dozen delegates from colonies across human space, not in suits of peace, but uniforms of unity, sleek black and gray, no weapons, no flags, just the seal of Earth over their hearts. Each stepped to Hale's side, and together they placed a final object on the council floor, a small cube, simple and silent. This is our last message, Hale said. Inside is a record of what happened and why inside is truth, not words. Do with it what you will. He looked once more to the council, his eyes resting for a final moment on the Vorgan delegate. We see you. We always have. And now you will see us. With that, the humans turned and walked out. No music, no guards, no applause. Just footsteps. And then silence. The council remained still even after they had gone. The cube pulsed gently at the center of the chamber, its quiet light a reminder of what had just happened. Some delegates whispered, others left in a hurry. A few stayed, seated, unable to speak. The Vorgan delegate leaned forward, now smile gone, eyes narrowed, not in victory, but in calculation. He had expected anger, he had expected threats. He had not expected this. Back on Earth, Hale stood beneath the sky of a new day, breathing in air that had not known war in generations. He looked to the stars and said nothing, because nothing needed to be said. The galaxy had made its choice. Now Earth would make its own. It began quietly like a tide, pulling away from shore, not sudden, not loud, but slow and deep and impossible to stop once it had begun. At first, no one noticed the change, not even the nearby systems that depended on human trade, not even the colonies that had grown rich from Earth's help. But the silence grew. One by one, human ships stopped appearing on long-range scans. Their usual patrol routes went empty. Their trade vessels missed their supply runs. Their embassies no longer sent updates, and their outposts stopped answering calls. Some said it was just a signal issue. Some said it was just a pause. But those who watched closely knew better. Humanity was disappearing. Not dying, not fleeing, just pulling back step by step, without words, without warning. The vast network they once held across 100 sectors faded like smoke in starlight. Stations that once glowed with lights and life now drifted cold and dark. Their airlocks sealed, their hangars closed, their power still running, but no voices inside, no signs of movement, just silent halls filled with questions. A science colony on the rim, once buzzing with researchers and drones, vanished overnight. Its buildings still intact, its systems still active, but every single person gone, their data wiped clean, their records erased as if they had never been there at all. A trade hub near the Ilari Belt, once a major junction between 7 species, found its entire human quarter empty, not looted, not destroyed, just vacant chairs, pushed in lights-off tables, clear doors locked from the inside. And the strange part was that nothing was broken. There was no damage, no struggle, no sign of retreat. It was as if they had simply stood up one day and walked away. The council tried to reach them, sent messages on every channel, waited for replies that never came. They asked nearby species for sightings or contacts, but all gave the same answer. The humans were gone. The Lauren Shapers sent their best minds to analyze the pattern and found it followed a perfect arc one that suggested not panic, but planning, not fear, but preparation. The Drelly Watchers reported that even the old ruins humans had once studied on distant moons were now sealed under thick black alloy, no longer accessible, no longer open for anyone to study. The humans were not just leaving, they were closing every door behind them. The Vorgans were the first to act. They had waited long enough. They believed the humans were bluffing or hiding, and they wanted to prove their power once more. They sent a fleet of 20 warships to a border colony once shared with Earth, a place called Grey Wind, known for its fusion mines and deep space docks. They arrived to find the colony silent, its towers dark, its satellites still spinning. They sent down soldiers armored and armed, expecting resistance. What they found instead was emptiness. Not a single life form on the planet, no sign of struggle, no broken walls, no burnt buildings, just clean rooms and cold air. Even the food was still warm in the kitchens, untouched on metal plates, as if the people had left in the middle of their day, without fear, without warning. The Vorgans searched the entire colony and found only one thing left behind. A single message carved into the floor of the command center with a laser etched deep into the alloy. It said, "We asked for peace, and you gave us silence. Now we give it back." The fleet never reported again. No signals, no signs of damage, no escape pods, no wreckage found. The entire task force vanished just like the humans. The council panicked, but did not admit it. They called emergency meetings, debated action, formed investigation teams that never returned with answers. Theories grew like vines, choking the truth. Some said the humans had created a new technology, something that could erase matter or bend time, or hide entire systems behind cloaks of light. Others believed they had moved beyond this galaxy, found a new home in the black between stars, or deep within folded space. A few said nothing, just watched the dark grow deeper. Ambassador Hale was never seen again. His office remained sealed, his residence untouched. His last message to Earth had simply read, "Mission complete, we are done." Earth itself vanished behind its shield. Where once there were open signals, now there was static. Where once there were daily updates, now there was silence. Satellites sent near the Sol system were turned away or never returned. Probes lost power as they approached Earth, as if something unseen drained them from the inside out. The stars around human space became quiet. Even the background noise of transmissions disappeared, as if humanity had wrapped itself in a shell no signal could pierce. Some called it the Iron Curtain, others called it the Black Shell. But whatever it was, nothing went in and nothing came out. Humanity had vanished from the galaxy, but not forgotten. In the silence they left behind, fear grew roots. Trade routes changed. Colonies that had once laughed at Earth now fortified their border. Species that had mocked human caution now studied old human texts, hoping to find clues. Old recordings of human diplomats and captains and teachers were replayed over and over in quiet rooms by those who missed their wisdom and those who feared their return. The peace Earth had offered was gone, and the galaxy now saw its weight. It had been the hand holding chaos back, the wall between conflict and calm. And without it, the cracks began to show. Small wars flared in distant systems, ones that Earth would have calmed with a word or a gesture. Pirates returned to space lanes that had once been guarded by human fleets. Plague spread on fringe worlds that no longer received the vaccines Earth once gave freely. The silence became heavy like a storm that refused to break. And still no one dared step into human space. Not even the Vorgans. Their pride could not overcome their fear. A single scout ship, tried once sent by a new power, rising from the core systems, curious and bold, they entered a system once home to a human research outpost. They found nothing but ruins and sky. And then their ship shut down. No power, no lights, no control. And then they heard a voice through their backup systems, calm and clear. You were warned. They returned broken. And they warned the rest. Do not go near Earth. They are not gone. They are only watching, waiting. And so the stars turned, and time moved on. And in the cold between worlds where no voices speak and no light travels, humanity watched in silence. 3 years passed like shadows across the stars, and in that silence, the galaxy changed not with fire or light, but with fear, with questions that no one could answer, and worries that grew in the hearts of every species that once called humanity weak. The council no longer sat in peace. Their meetings were shorter, filled with tension and blame. Old alliances cracked under the weight of quiet paranoia. Colonies fortified their skies, trade shrank, and the sense of unity that once held the galaxy together began to rot from within. Still Earth said nothing. Still the humans did not speak. And the silence screamed. Then it happened. It began on the edge of the Ralthian Drift, where a Vorgan dreadnought drifted quietly between stars on patrol, with no threats nearby, no signs of conflict, and no reason to be alert. The ship was armed with weapons that could tear moons in half. Its shields could block a solar flare. Its crew were warriors bred for battle and trained since birth. None survived. There were no alarms, no escape pods, no distress signals, only a final recorded frame caught by a deep-range observer drone. It showed a shadow crossing the stars, a shape not seen before, black and sleek like a knife, in space, moving faster than anything the observer had ever recorded. Then static. The council called for answers, but none came. A second ship disappeared near the Drelly spiral, then a station, then a listening post, then 5 more ships across 3 sectors. All gone. All without warning. All within a single cycle. Panic returned to the chambers of power. Some said it was a new empire rising from the void. Others whispered of ancient machines waking from the dark between galaxies. But those who remembered the humans knew the truth. Earth was returning, but not with words, not with peace. They came without colors, without symbols, without signals, just silent ships with black hulls and no names, moving like ghosts across the sky. They did not fire on civilians. They did not strike the innocent. They came only for those who had watched humanity bleed and done nothing. They came only for the guilty. A Vorgan base built on a stolen moon vanished in one night, not destroyed, not attacked, just gone. Satellites showed the base, still there, still active, still lit. Then in the next frame, nothing but stone and silence, as if the moon had never been touched at all. A mercenary fleet hired to guard a border world opened fire on what they thought was a simple mining vessel. It had no weapons, no shields, just smooth black panels and quiet engines. The fleet did not last 3 seconds. No wreckage, no bodies, only the sound of their final scream, recorded in a forgotten comm channel before silence took them. Then came the message, broadcast across every known language, every channel, every system. Not loud, not angry, just words. We tried peace. You taught us it was a mistake. We will not ask again. The council froze. No vote, no plan, no command could stop what had begun. Across the galaxy, worlds that once mocked Earth now lowered their banners and watched the stars with fear. Colonies that once laughed now whispered the old stories, the ones humans had never told in full, the ones about Earth's final war and what it took to earn peace. Those stories had always sounded like legends, tales for soldiers and students. Now they felt real. The Lauren Shapers tried to reach out, sent messages in every language, offered talks, offered truth, offered regret. The humans did not reply. The Vrati Council offered data, offered recordings, offered evidence of past betrayal, hoping to show they had never supported the Vorgans, hoping to prove their hands were clean. The humans did not answer. Even the Drelly Watchers, who had once respected human silence, sent a plea for understanding, for contact, for anything at all. The humans stayed silent because they had already said everything, and the galaxy had chosen to ignore it. In the shadows of human space, the black ships gathered, not in fleets, Not in formations, just presence, a growing number of silent shapes between stars, unmoving, unblinking. And then they began to build. Observers caught glimpses of strange structures appearing near dead systems, machines larger than cities glowing with a cold blue light, then gone before scans could complete. No one knew what they were for, and no one dared to ask. The Vorgans tried one last strike. They gathered their best, their fastest, their strongest, and launched an assault on a suspected human relay station deep in unclaimed space. They reached the coordinates. They saw nothing. Then they vanished. One by one, each ship lost to silence, until only the flagship remained spinning slowly with no power, drifting like a forgotten toy in a sea of black. Inside, its final message was found recorded in the captain's own voice, shaking and raw. They were already here. We were never alone. They let us come. They let us think. Then, they erased us. This is not a war. This is a reminder. Then the signal ended, and the ship drifted into the nearest star. No one claimed the wreckage. No one spoke the captain's name. The galaxy went quiet again, not from peace, but from fear. They watched as Earth returned, not as a member, not as a friend, but as something else, something greater, something colder. Humanity had changed. They had remembered, and now the stars would never be the same. Fear moved faster than ships, faster than weapons, faster than light itself. It slipped into conversations, into meetings, into dreams. It whispered through calm lines and echoed in empty hallways, and it grew with every silent movement from the edge of human space. The galaxy that once laughed at Earth now trembled at its silence. No one dared speak the word war, but all felt the tension rising like a storm behind. Closed doors, generals met without smiles, and diplomats sent messages with shaking hands not to Earth, but to each other, asking what comes next, who is next, when will it begin. Earth said nothing. The black ships never attacked colonies, never touched civilian ports, never fired first, but their presence was enough. They hung in the dark like silent judges, appearing near council outposts, drifting near trade lanes, watching, always watching, never speaking, never striking, only watching. One by one, council members began to fortify their borders, not just with shields, but with fear. Planets once proud of open skies now kept their gates locked at all hours. New satellites were launched, defensive grids, activated warships, moved into orbit not to fight, but to wait. Even the Vorgans, who once stood tall, now looked over their shoulders. Their newest ships patrolled their core systems in tight formations. Their academies stopped teaching Earth as a weak race and started teaching them as a myth, a shadow, a warning. Whispers spread through the outer colonies, people who had seen the black ships up close, people who claimed they heard things in the silence, voices that spoke not with sound, but with thought, memories pulled from their minds and returned altered, not violent, not cruel, just changed, as if someone or something had looked inside and understood everything and left it untouched but known. The Drelly tried to speak with Earth again. They sent a drone laced with ancient songs, encoded messages wrapped in poetry and light. It returned untouched, but opened with a single message glowing softly on its screen. We do not wish to harm, but we will never forget. The Vrati sent scouts not to spy, but to learn. They followed the black ships at a distance, try to map their paths, try to understand their silence. What they saw changed them forever. One returned broken, unable to speak for days before writing a single line. They are preparing something vast. The other scout never returned. Fear began to change more than minds. It changed trade. It changed alliances. Entire networks collapsed as routes shifted away from anything near human space. Worlds that once thrived with commerce began to suffer. Stations closed, ports, rusted goods piled up with no buyers. Earth had not fired a single shot, but already the galaxy was bleeding. And still the humans said nothing. The council met in secret this time, without recordings, without broadcasts, without ceremony. Only the highest members sat in the great hall. Now, its lights dim, its seats half empty, their voices low and uncertain. They debated options, none of them good. Should we send an apology? Someone asked. Would it matter? Said another. Should we prepare for war? Said a third. No one answered, because they all knew that Earth did not want war. They had already chosen a different path, a colder path, one the galaxy had never seen before. Total separation. It was not conquest, it was control through absence, a reminder that power does not always roar. Sometimes it simply refuses to speak, and that silence is worse. The Lauren Shapers called it the void doctrine, the idea that by removing themselves from the galactic stage, humans had forced all others to face their own weakness, their own guilt, their own fear. And it worked. Entire systems began to collapse into chaos. Local leaders, once protected by human diplomacy, now faced rebellion. Pirates returned and forced black markets, grew stronger. No one trusted anyone, and yet all kept watching the stars, waiting for the return that might never come, or might already be happening in ways no one could see. Old enemies tried to use the moment. The Vorgans launched a quiet campaign to reclaim minor territories lost to human alliances, but their fleets vanished, not in battle, not in flames, just gone messages, lost sensors, blind ships drifting empty. The official reports blamed malfunctions, navigation errors, space storms, anything but the truth. The truth no one dared speak. Earth was watching, and Earth was deciding. Inside council chamber, species that once held power now begged for unity. They proposed reforms, new treaties, peace talks, funding for relief, all the things humans once offered freely now spoken of as if new and noble. But none of it worked, because the fear was already too deep, because the humans had already given them the chance, and they had thrown it away. Now, they understood what they had lost, not just the trade, not just the protection, but the idea that peace could be something stronger than fear. That idea was gone, and in its place stood black ships with no names, drifting like memories of a choice never made. Some tried to leave the galaxy entirely. Projects began to build ships that could travel farther than ever before, past known space into the dark beyond, hoping to escape whatever storm might come. Others dug in deeper, building bunkers beneath planets, carving shelters into moons, surrounding themselves with walls and weapons and prayers. The fear spread, not because Earth threatened, but because they did not. Not a word, not a warning, not a sound. Only silence. And silence was worse than war, because it left the galaxy to imagine what might come. And imagination is always crueler than truth. The humans had changed the game, not by playing, but by walking away. And in doing so, they won. The council no longer ruled with votes, but with fear of silence. The powers of the galaxy no longer looked to each other, but to the edge of the map where human space lay dark and quiet and full of ghosts. They remember now the old stories, not the ones they laughed at, but the ones the humans never shared, the stories of Earth's last war, and the machines they built, and the weapons they buried, and the lines they swore never cross again. Now the galaxy wondered, what if those lines had already been crossed? And what if Earth was no longer waiting, but preparing? The fear spread like fire in dry grass, and no one could stop it, because it lived not in ships or weapons, but in every shadow between stars. The stars were quiet again, but this silence was different. It was not the silence of peace or rest. It was the silence before something final, the kind of silence that makes even time seem afraid to move forward. 4 months now the galaxy had lived under the shadow of vanished ships and drifting warnings of black vessels that came and went like ghosts of judgment. For months there had been no reply from Earth, no signal, no call, no treaty, no war. Only silence. And then the message came. It did not arrive in one place. It arrived in all places at once. Every screen, every monitor, every device, every terminal, even the smallest comlink in the most forgotten mining colony blinked with light and opened with one single voice, a voice calm and cold and impossibly human. You were given a choice. The voice did not shout. It did not echo. It simply was. It felt close no matter how far you were from Earth. It felt near, as if the speaker stood just behind you in the room. We came in peace, we came in hope, we came with open hands and kind hearts. We offered friendship not out of weakness, but out of strength, the strength to forgive, the strength to believe in something greater than conquest. The voice paused, and in that pause the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. You laughed at our kindness, you mistook our patience for fear, you called our mercy a flaw, and our trust a mistake. You betrayed the peace we gave you, and still we did not answer with violence, we answer with silence. Images followed, not of war, not of fire, but of memories, people helping people, humans building homes on distant moons, teaching alien children, healing wounded soldiers, feeding lost colonies across every species, across every language. You called it soft. We called it humanity. More images followed, burning ships, the wreckage of science vessels, the destroyed convoys, all quiet, all real. We waited for truth, but you gave us silence. We asked for justice, but you gave us excuses. We hoped for change, but you gave us more reasons to walk away. And so we did. More silence now, deeper, darker, as if even the stars themselves turned away. You sent spies, you sent weapons, you sent fleets, and when they vanished, you sent blame. We said, nothing, still you asked for nothing, and now we give you nothing. This is not a threat. We do not come to conquer. We do not come to rule. We do not want your planets, your skies, or your people. We want distance. We want memory. We want silence returned. The screen shifted again, showing planets once touched by human hands, now cold and quiet, showing trade hubs once filled with music, now shut down, showing black ships watching from the dark, never moving, never speaking. We will not punish. We will not explain. We will not come again. You had your moment. You made your choice. The voice paused one last time, and this time it felt heavy, like the end of something older than war, older than fear. Let this be your lesson. Let this be your history. Let this be the scar you never forget. Because we will not return. The screens faded and the light dimmed across the stars. No ships moved, no voices spoke. Even the council chamber stood frozen, as if time itself dared not breathe. The message was not just words, it was a door, closing a truth too heavy to ignore. Earth was gone. Not destroyed, not dead. Gone. Beyond reach. Beyond apology. Beyond forgiveness. For weeks after the message, the galaxy moved like a shadow. Everything slower, everything quieter. People walked carefully, spoke gently. Ships traveled with lights dimmed, as if they could still be seen, as if one wrong move might bring the black ships back. But they never came. They had said all they would ever say. And the galaxy finally listened. On distant worlds, people began to build again, not for profit, not for control, but to repair the damage they had done to each other. Colonies reopened, not with trade, but with trust. Species that had once hated each other now sat in quiet rooms, reading old messages left by human ambassadors, by human doctors, by human engineers, who once gave them hope without asking for anything in return. The silence that followed was not empty. It was filled with change. The council itself changed, its banners taken down, its rules rewritten, not in power, but in humility. Old laws erased and new ones written. With trembling hands, the council became smaller, more honest, more afraid of itself. And through it all, the humans watched. They never spoke again, but sometimes black ships could still be seen drifting near the edges of systems, still watching, still waiting, not to strike, not to punish, but to remember. Because that is what humans have become. Memory. They had offered peace, and it had been refused. They had shown kindness, and it had been mocked. They had turned away, not in anger, but in understanding. And now the galaxy understood too. They called it the message, not a broadcast, not a threat, not a demand, but the message, the one thing they would teach their children, the one thing no one would forget. That peace is a gift, and kindness is a weapon, and silence is never empty. That humanity had come in peace, and walked away forever. And in that walking, changed the stars, forever.